Hassan, we definitely had to keep track of him last week, just from a numbers count. But yeah, he's an ox, man. He can carry the weight for sure. Aiden Hutchinson is the best college football player in the country, and I think for a lot of you all, we have some very powerful voices here, and I would encourage everyone to try to use that powerful voice to spread that message.
They get the ball out fast. You've got to challenge them, and you got to be aggressive. But they've done a really good job in recruiting and bringing players in that can make the one-on-one plays.
As far as our game against Michigan, another top 10 team coming in here. The great thing about it is here at home. It's the last opportunity to play here in the Shell for some of our seniors and our players that have exhausted the eligibility. And, this time of year, as I told our team, becomes kind of sentimental because it starts bringing closure to some things. And for some of these players, these guys have never experienced a postseason game.
All right, good afternoon, and welcome into this afternoon live. That was Maryland head coach Mike Locksley. Also, right before that, you heard from Michigan linebackers coach George Hilo. Also, Josh Gaddis, the U of M offensive coordinator. Thanks to MGO Blue and Terrapin Sports Report as we get ready to take off here on this Thursday. It's great to bring in the senior editor of the Maize and Blue Review. That is Adam Schnepp, who is on the line and on camera. It's good to see him. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hey, Dennis. I'm great. How are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited for this weekend, but also I'm going to be honest. I'm not really looking forward to staying up to 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, watching. I love watching Michigan basketball. But, it's like this big chore, to stay up past 3 o'clock. I can do it, but I'm not totally looking forward to I think I'll be all right on the front end. That's the back end that I'm worried about, getting up early on Saturday morning.
Exactly. Yep. For me. It doesn't help that it's also happen 2 days.
That's right. Who knows how it's going to work out on Sunday? Well, I flipped a coin right before you came on backstage to figure out whether I would talk football or basketball first. And basketball won, and we just didn't comment on them. So it's a good spot to start here and look back at the Michigan Seton Hall game. We had a day or two to digest or absorb that one. Was it a bad night for the Wolverines, or do you think there's something going on there to really worry about if you're a Michigan basketball fan? What would you tell them?
I would say November happened, and be glad that it's November and not March, right? I don't think there's anything in there that's necessarily going to derail the season. I think it's just working through early season issues, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I think they tried some things offensively with ball screens that are going to be successful, even if they weren't necessarily that night. 3-point shots weren't falling, and those are going to go because they had good looks. I think really what's going to happen is just they're going to dig in and refine a lot of things on the defensive end of the floor, especially with how they switch. And those are things that I think are correctable given time.
Yeah, you know what? I looked at the very end, the free throws, people were complaining a little bit about the free throws in the first couple games. And, of course, that got them there at the end. And, maybe also some of the plays that they were running right down to the final 2 minutes, you're going to scrutinize everything, even in an early game like this. And I just remember in the non-conference games last year, when they needed really to get something, they went to Hunter Dickinson. And maybe that sounds too easy, so I'm sitting here just saying, hey, make sure you're, throwing him down, trying to get him a touch in the post or somewhere else. And, for that last 2 minutes, he got an offensive rebound on a Brandon Johns miss, but there was a turnover. They tried to get it to him and Devontae Jones, but they really didn't say, hey, let's make a concerted effort to get it down to the big guy. And I think that, to me is the number one thing moving forward. Get it to the big guy late if you're in a one-possession game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the very worst, you're thinking he's probably going to draw a foul. And historically, he's a pretty good free throw shooter, even if that wasn't true through the first 2 games. Just 2 games, I think it's an aberration. And I think overall it was really just kind of a sloppy last 4 minutes for Michigan. A lot of turnovers and a lot of mistakes that seem uncharacteristic given what we've seen from guys in the past. And so that's another thing. I think it's fairly correctable when you've seen guys that have a track record, and when they don't necessarily play that way over one game, things like that happen.
Yeah, and not to freak out with one game, but it's a reminder of just how a little bit of magic they had going last year. When you think about last year's basketball team, they started 11-0. This thing was going, and they just demanded that they pulled you in, that you paid attention to them, and then after that, they didn't lose. I think the 18-2 they started. this thing was. It went from, well, let's just see what this basketball team's doing, to every single night you had to start paying attention to them. And here they were, 18-2. And so you're thinking heading into this year with the recruiting class and Devontae Jones and what everybody was saying about him, and, Juwan Howard, that, this thing was going to be, like last year. And it's a good reminder that every single season's different, even if you have some of the same components and even if you like some of the newcomers. I wanted to ask you, I asked on the Wolverine Den, what was one thing that you wanted to see, whether it was from basketball or football. What about basketball? What would be one thing that you would identify that you'd want to see in this Vegas main event coming up this weekend?
So the one thing that I'll be watching really closely is Caleb Houston defensively. He got lost quite a few times up there against Seton Hall, and you've got a guy who has so much potential. And I've got to think, and you want to give a young guy the benefit of the doubt, but these are just those first few college games as he's kind of getting up to speed. And I would think that he would improve there. I'm sure that's going to be a point of emphasis for them. And so I'll be watching him closely to see how he defends both on screens and in zone, kind of across the board, really.
You going to be watching live, or are you DVRing it, waking up and watching it?
That's a great question, Dennis. I think I'll be live.
All right. That's what I like to hear. Tough it out. Stay up late. All right. Well, let's take you from the desert out there in Vegas all the way back out east. That'll be College Park, 3:30. Michigan taking on Maryland here. How about I just roll that same question out to you for the football team? What would be one thing you could look for that you'd want to see the Wolverines against the Maryland Terrapins do better this weekend?
I'm not sure about do better, but one thing that I will be looking for is how Michigan's receivers fare against Maryland's corners, both because Maryland's going to press them, and you got to think Ohio State's going to do that the next week as well, and you want to see how they handle that, but also because I think it's just a mismatch. I think it's an opportunity for them to gain some confidence going into the last game of the year, as well as keeping some wear off the tires of Hassan Haskins. Maryland's linebackers also don't look fantastic to me, so I think that you can do a whole lot in the passing game with both your receivers and your tight ends against those guys. So I will definitely be watching how Cade McNamara and his receivers do.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic point. They've seen a lot of zone in these last two games. They're going to see those guys up in their face, how they handle the releases and all those different things will be something. At first you just look at Roman Wilson and you think, maybe they could just manhandle him at the line, but he's also so fast and maybe he'll be able to get away with them. So that's a fascinating inside the game. That's what I'll be watching too. I like it.
It's a good time to find out whose route running skills have really developed and to find out who's kind of an artisan in that area of the game. And that's just one more piece of information then that you have when you're trying to build a game plan for the next team.
The final question for you, and it has to do with the noon game. So do you want, if you're a Michigan fan, you're recommending because Michigan, do you want Ohio State to kill Michigan State? You want Michigan State to have some success so it maybe gives Michigan, you feel better about Michigan's chances? What do you recommend to people that are watching, listening to this about what should happen at high noon down in Columbus, what people should be looking for, rooting for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you have to just put the rivalry aside and root for Ohio State if you want to keep the college football playoff goal in front of you. If you're a Michigan fan, I think as far as whether you're rooting for a blowout or a close game, that's a great question. Very much an emotional one too, I think. Personally, I don't see how you could be upset with a close game as long as the team want to win comes out on top. Because what's going to give you the most confidence, of course, is if it looks like Ohio State plays Michigan in a fairly similar fashion to the way that Michigan played Michigan State, or Ohio State plays Michigan State in a similar fashion to how Michigan played Michigan State, score-wise, yardage-wise, Kenneth Walker III-wise, all of that. And so I guess, personally, I'm looking for a close game.
All right. That's what I'll be looking for as well. I'll be looking on TMBR for your stories all weekend long. I know you'll be filing them. I know you'll be there, and I look forward to that information. Have a great weekend, and thanks again for joining us here on this Thursday afternoon live, Adam.
So much, Dennis. You have a great one, too.
Hey, there he is, Adam Schnepp, the TMBR senior editor. It's great to have him on, and right now it is fabulous to go from Adam Schnepp to Jim Scarcelli, the former Wolverine, who joins us here on this afternoon live. Scar, thanks for joining us here live at 1:10, now 1:11 in the afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm doing good. Hopefully the Wolverine basketball team can get back on the right track. But
yeah, what did you think? We talked about it, Jim. A bad night, a reason to be really worried. You know, what side of that equation would you be on?
Let me just say this real quick. I don't like the idea of playing at 12:30 at night for our guys. I mean, that's terrible. They got to do a better job. And everybody talks about the student athlete, what's right for the student athlete. I just think that's terrible. I just want to throw that out there. But
well, let me jump in. If you're a coach, you think Juwan, I haven't heard him. I'm sure the reporters asked him, like, are you getting these guys? Are you practicing later here tonight? Are you having them stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? It seems like you would do that. I think that, you know, the coaches might be yawning and stuff on the sideline. I think the players will be all right, but this could affect them. They've got a little bit of time after they come home. You know, they play Tuesday against Tarleton. So they should be okay, but you know they might be a little, might be a little worn out, might be a little road weary from, coming back from, Vegas, staying up that late.
Yeah, it's just, listen, you and I, we got a hard time staying up past midnight. But when you're young, it's not that big a deal. But I just think for our fan base, for the player, I just don't understand it. They should have made better accommodations for the team coming from the different time zone, but that's that. But listen, Danny, the big thing I'm looking for, we got to find other scorers, man. We got 2 guys that are being defended. If I was defending Michigan, I would put my best defender, big guy, on Hunter Dickinson. I'd put my best defending guard, small guy, on Brooks. And anytime they touch the ball, I would switch to make sure that Brooks doesn't get any shots. Anytime Hunter gets the ball, I would sag off and try to disrupt him. And I would leave Brandon Johns. I would leave William. I would leave those guys alone and react late to them. So defensively, I would react late to those other 3 players until they prove they can make shots. So that's how I see it. We have to find other guys that can score. Otherwise, the defenses are just going to say, hey, we're going to hammer these 2 guys and force these other 3 guys to beat us.
Well, and down the stretch, they went to Brandon Johns Jr., and this is with under a minute to go in a 1-possession game. They let Caleb Houston drive in the lane and get a shot there. Looked like a pretty good shot. It wasn't just the 2 guys. Those guys weren't able to hit those. And then, at the end, Eli Brooks, handed it off there or passed the ball to Terrence Williams, who got fouled. So they had some guys in some situations down the stretch. I look back after going back and watching it again, the 3-point shooting wasn't there, and that's always a huge equalizer in college basketball. But then when you start talking about things, how a team that might not be as talented, but is going to be able to stay in a game and have an opportunity, they do things like they turn you over. Michigan had some unforced turnovers, and Seton Hall also had some turnovers. And, you go through a couple other things that went on in that game. Offensive rebounds, like a Seton Hall player misses a front end of a 1-and-1, and they're getting the offensive rebound. I know it was such a clunker that it came out, which happens with rebounding, but they were able to get another offensive rebound in there late. Those are the kind of things that are going to keep an underdog in it, and almost all those things. Then you get to the execution part with under 2 minutes to go and not the right spacing, not getting the ball. They did a nice job getting it to Eli Brooks, but I don't think they did a nice enough job getting it to Hunter Dickinson there late. So they've got a full plate of things to work at and try to correct and get better heading into the desert this weekend.
Yeah, the thing about getting the ball to Hunter, it's one thing getting the ball to Hunter when he's got Livers sitting at the 3-point line or Franz sitting at the 3-point line. But again, the defenses are treating us a whole lot differently than they did. Until we can establish that, Hunter's going to have people coming from all angles, and he has to be able to kick it out to some serious threats out there. But we got to do better defensively. Again, that's young guys, our rotations. We got to just be better and sound on our screens, and that's communicating, and that's playing with each other more. Obviously, this is a road game. The UNLV will have their fans there. I think it's at a neutral site. It's at a different site. It's not their home arena, but it's still, they're going to have a lot of people there. Denny, we haven't seen the Michigan zone. Just for a couple possessions, Juwan was running a lot more of that last year. Maybe we'll see some of that. But at the same time that I'm getting after our 3-point shooting, we got to remember this, to be fair. You got to remember what kind of shooter Isaiah Livers was as a freshman, or Franz Wagner was as a freshman. That's why we got to be patient with Caleb Houston. I saw him play in high school, and when he gets comfortable and gets better able to handle the stress, he'll be a knockdown shooter.
Yeah, and you mentioned it after the game. They found a little something there as the games have gone by here with Kobe Buffkin. He looks comfortable. He looks smooth. He could be somebody. And we're just a couple games in here. If they're shooting, if you get into December and they're going, whatever it was, 3 or 4 for 13, that'll be one thing. But I would expect them to shoot a little bit better from outside as well. And you know what? It also goes to show you transfers. Michigan hit the jackpot last year with Mike Smith and Shawnee Brown. Those guys came in. They moved right into their roles, and it was like they were there for 5 years. I know they've been running all off season and practicing and doing whatever, scrimmaging, and now they're into it. But it can take a little time there when you got somebody running the point as well. So there could be a transition period when it comes down to.
You're right. I think that's another thing. I think Buffkin will probably get more playing time Friday, and they got to find a third guard though. They got to find a guy to get Jones out of the game, to get Brooks out of the game, because they really didn't get out of the game. And I really thought some of Jones's errors at the end was because he was tired. He didn't leave the game, and I think that affects your mental ability, and sometimes you're making mistakes. So they got to find a third guard. Hopefully Buffkin can step up and be a guy that can jump in and score for us too. But let's be patient with our shooting, and hopefully we get the 3-point line where they got to deal with it, and then Hunter can kick it out like we did last year.
Yeah, and hopefully they win this first one, because if they win the first one, if I have it right, they'll be able to play at 9 Eastern on Sunday night, which isn't all that bad. And then they'll take on the winner of the Wichita State Shockers and the Arizona Wildcats, and that'll be at 9 o'clock. If they lose against Vegas or the Running Rebels, then they got to go back and play another one of those past midnight games. So go ahead and make sure you're getting this one. If you're gonna go 1-1, win the first one, win them both.
No, I get it. I just don't like it. I don't like playing. Danny, I don't think a college football team should have to play more than one night game a year. That's a whole nother story we can get into. But as a college football player, you get one night a week to go out and kind of do something. And it's Saturday night after a game, and you're playing at night. You don't get a chance to do anything. And it just bothers me as a former player that these guys will play, 2-3 night games, and it's your parents come up, like to go out to have dinner after, and what are you going to do at midnight? When they come up to see you. So it's kind of bothers me as a former player. Interesting point.
I thought, I hadn't thought about it. I would have guessed that the players would have said, yeah, we love night games, man. It's awesome. Let's play as many night games as we can, because of the atmosphere and playing under the lights is so exciting. But you're saying you think if they took a poll, players would be like, no, let's get it. Let's have the noon game so we can get out and enjoy our Saturday nights.
That's right. So you can, after the game, you can spend time with your family who comes up to the game, go have dinner and, get caught up with them instead of having to, midnight, hear what's going on at midnight. Nothing, and you can't even celebrate with your classmates. So, just a different perspective from a guy who went through it,
Yeah. Well, nothing's good's going on after midnight here. I don't know.
Right.
I don't stay. I'm going to try tomorrow night to stay up past midnight. We'll see how that goes. Jim Scarcelli, you can see it. Linebacker in the 80s for Michigan out of Warren Woods. And, Jim, you could have gone anywhere to play anywhere in the country. We'll get into the Michigan recruiting spotlight here. And I thought it'd be interesting. Michigan, their latest verbal commitment's a kid out of Illinois named Jimmy Rolder. And he, on Tuesday night, went on Twitter and said he's going to Michigan. But, here's somebody that's coming in, a pretty highly regarded linebacker. That's what you were. What do you think that Rolder can expect as he comes in? I don't know if he's indicated whether he's going to be in for spring or not, but what can he expect?
Denny, there's so many things about the recruiting process and coming in and why some guys fail, why some guys succeed, why some guys finish. I mean, some things they just can't predict when they're recruiting kids. And, I wrote down some things that what he can expect. Listen, for the first time in his life, he's going to have freedom. You're going to be in your own dorm room. You're going to have to, you can, get up when you want. You're going to have girls all over. You're going to have parties every night of the week that are down the hall. It's, I was at South Quad. That's where the football play. Every night of the week, there was a party. So there's ways to get distracted. One of the greatest questions a college coach asked me when I was a high school coach and he was recruiting one of my players, he asked me, Denny, he says, listen, if this kid has an 8 o'clock class and there's a foot of snow on the ground and the class is a mile away, is he going to class? And that was such a great question because anybody who went to college, has to make that decision. And, hopefully he's the kind of kid that'll do that. And that's what the coaches are trying to figure out when they're recruiting a kid. But I've seen a lot of guys fail because of the demands of school. I mean, Michigan is a tough school, and the demands of football and the combination of both. It's just mentally very, very difficult. And some guys have trouble handling that. But every year during double sessions, which was 2 brutally practices for about 2 weeks, you'd have guys leaving in the middle of double sessions every year. Guys would just pack up the next day. Where's he? Oh, he's gone. He left. He quit because it was so mentally and physically demanding. But one of the toughest things for coaches to really figure out when you're recruiting someone is just how mentally and physically tough is a kid. And those are the things that are hard to figure out when you're recruiting someone. So it's trying to guess or anticipate how he does or what he can expect. But he can expect, a demanding school that he's going to have to deal with some of the smartest kids in America every day. He's going to have to deal with them before lunch. And at lunch after lunch, he's going to have to deal and compete with some of the best athletes in the country. And so that's what he can expect. I don't know if that answered your question. I can go on, Denny. I can go on and on about the demands of school and football for someone. But
well, what about a little bit of a recommendation here? Rolder is also really good at baseball, and he hasn't indicated. I haven't seen as of yet if he's going to try to go over and play both sports. Michigan does have a linebacker, Joey Velasquez, who does participate in baseball and in football. What would your recommendation be for somebody who wanted to go after, like you already talked about, the demands of, I say, just being a football player now, but if you want to be a football player and a power-hitting third baseman, like apparently Rolder is?
That's interesting. I apparently Coach Harbaugh, that's the way you understand it. Coach Harbaugh agreed to that. He's going to allow him to miss spring.
I don't know if he said he wanted to play baseball or not, but Velasquez is doing it. So yeah. I would think that if he wants to give it a shot, they would allow him to do that. But that's just me speculating.
Yeah, that would be, I guess for the right athlete they allow that. But I know the coach would be very. It would be a hard thing for a coach to say, go ahead and skip spring football or parts of spring football because of baseball, because it's, that's where positions are won and lost. And it's really hard to compete if you're not at spring football. So I don't know. I mean, if that's what he chooses to do that, and if the coaches are allowing him to do that, good luck, but it's going to be tougher to compete football-wise.
Well, it's a good point. If you just think about the freshmen that have played this year from on offense, J.J. McCarthy and Andrell Anthony, both of those two guys were in from spring. Junior Colson, who's a linebacker, a true freshman who has played this year, he was also in for spring. I'm seeing if there's anybody. I'm thinking Rod Moore, who got in, played a lot of safety against Penn State. He was not in for spring. So out of at least the freshman I mentioned there, I don't know if I'm missing another true freshman that has played. 4 out of those 5 were in for spring. So if Rolder does want to get on the field immediately, getting in for spring is something I don't know if they recommend, but if you want to play immediately, it does help you.
Yeah, that's totally changed. These freshmen the kids coming in, the second semester, they graduate early and they come in and they compete and they go through spring football. Some of them are even there for bowl practices. I've got mixed thoughts on it. I understand the idea of coming in and trying to compete and going through spring football. I like the idea. A lot of the guys will come in and they'll go spring and summer term after spring football. I really like that as a former player, that a kid can get on campus. He graduates from high school. He gets on campus and he goes to school in the spring term and in the summer term with no spring football, and he's simply getting acclimated to the academics. I really like that, because I remember my freshman year, 1981. Heck, we had the freshmen come in 3 days, just freshmen, and then it's 2 weeks of doubles, which were brutal, and then bam, you're into game week, and game week is also when school starts. So that is a really demanding adjustment for an 18, 17-year-old kid, competing in the morning with the great students at Michigan, and now competing after school with some of the great athletes. And it's 7 days a week. Football was 7 days a week then. So I like the idea of guys coming in early. I think it's in terms of after spring football, I like that. But, some guys are able to come in, and it's probably helped JJ a little bit. It definitely helps the coach. The coaches probably like it. They get an early look at kids.
Yeah, out of all those guys I mentioned, I should also put in somebody who could figure heavy into the game plan this week, Donovan Edwards at running back. I don't know the status of Blake Corum. It sounded like Ohio State, that I don't know about saving him, but the possibility of taking a little bit of the burden off of Hassan Haskins. I just think it seems like a good spot here where you could see a true freshman in Donovan Edwards, who's had to work through an injury, but I did get some run against Penn State. I would think that he would be a player, definitely number 7 in the Michigan backfield to keep an eye on. Antoine is saying, I like Jim. He knows what he's talking about. Well, that's why we bring him on. He says Michigan should bring in curriculum requirements down for the athletes. Let's be honest, they're not going for education, most of them. This is why Michigan football is at a disadvantage in terms of recruiting. So I don't know if you had a thought on what he was saying there, if you agree or disagree.
No, I would never, look, you have a lot of different majors that you can choose at Michigan. You can go a lot of different ways, and I would never be interested in compromising the academic demands and keeping that at a high level. One thing I believe that Coach Harbaugh, and I believe he gives guys if a kid has to miss practice for a test, or maybe has to come late because he has to see a tutor or the professor, I think he is, how do I say it, a little more reasonable than when I played, giving guys the opportunity to do that. But I would never lower the standards. That's why I'm always fighting, Denny. I am always fighting for more time for players, less practice time, more time to be a student. I think one of the things we always hear about is you have the academic support, you have athletes, and for the most part, we don't need tutors. We just need time to study. We need more time to study. I don't need a tutor. But I would never think about lowering the great academic standards of Michigan's. Our guys can handle it. I don't think they're recruiting guys if they don't believe they can handle it. And I'd have to disagree that the majority of guys are just going to college just to try to make it to pro football. I mean, I think that's a misconception. I do believe it's maybe a little more of a priority than when I played. Guys are really looking at pro football options after but I think there's a lot of guys that are, I'll just speak for the Michigan. I think they want to get a good quality education. It might sound like just former player talk, but I do believe they are.
Well, Jim, I think people that played football at Michigan, people that went to Michigan, in the off season, there was a player that ended up going, a wide receiver ended up going to Texas when he committed to Michigan, Xavier Worthy, and he wanted to get in for spring, but I don't know, like people don't really want to talk about it, whether it's transcripts or early enrollee or whatever it was, credits being able to transfer. And there were a lot of people out there looked at the transfer portal and looked at this and said, hey, Michigan's got to adjust this or they're going to miss out on a lot of players. And of course, the Red River shootout rivalry, where they, had one of the greatest games ever and people were lamenting it. But if I talk to a few people that went to Michigan, I say, you know what? They don't want to adjust too many of these things. People like, for good reason, whatever it is, the U.S. World News and Report puts out the, best public institutions. And, Michigan's always, if they're not one, they're right there. USC, UCLA, Michigan this year. And the point to the person that I was talking with said, hey, they start, bending that, letting, the credits transfer in. Next thing you know, you could be out of the top 10 on that. And so while, you got to weigh those things, I don't know if it's the exact answer. Like, no, you stand your ground on some things and other things. I think they look at all of that, but sometimes you don't realize it could hurt you in one area where you might think there's no harm and
Danny, there's two sides to that. The strength of our academics, there's two sides to it. There's an advantage and there's a disadvantage. If we're recruiting a kid who's a great student and he wants to be challenged with the best academics in the country, he's going to be interested in Michigan. Okay. The downside of it is sometimes there's a kid we want and maybe we might have trouble getting them in. You know what I mean? We might have trouble because of our great academics where those guys in Columbus can get them in and we can't get them in. So there's an upside and there's a downside. If a kid is, you can tell many times when they're like the Hinton kid, both of them, we recruited the other one that went to Stanford. You look at the teams that kid was visiting. I think he visited Michigan, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, and Stanford. You can tell what's going on in that family. The one kid went to Stanford, the other one went to Michigan. So it's a two-edged sword there, but I wouldn't be interested in weakening our standards as a university because again, it helps us recruit some kids too. All right.
Yeah. And the thing in the past, people like whether it's the gray areas or flat out just, going in and, luring players in with, cold hard cash. Now with the name, image, and likeness, you can go out there, present a package and, there's a lot of different ways around this now, but that should, I don't know if it's leveled any kind of playing field yet. I mean, this thing is kind of the Wild West, but I think over this next month, this early signing period, you got a coaching carousel flying around. There's going to be a lot of players that are interested in what kind of packages that specific universities can roll out. And I keep thinking, Scar, I don't know, like it's just thinking out loud. Harbaugh, when he came in, did so many different things, like whatever the rules were. He's like, hey, let's go down and have some satellite camps. Let's put on a Oscar presentation, like signing with the stars. Let's find money from boosters that we could, take guys abroad and like all these different things. I thought, man, this is out of the box. This is, going to be attractive. So now you have the name, image, and likeness. I keep thinking that, Harbaugh and company, maybe the whole university here, they've got something up their sleeve that they're ready to, break out. That's going to benefit when it comes down to recruiting. But I don't know.
Danny, I tell you, man, I love, as a former player, I love the idea because I think it matters. The trips that Michigan takes and go to Rome, go to South Africa, that matters. When that coach is in the living room and the coach says, listen, I want to give these kids a full education. It's not just football. He's taking them, and luckily we got some alum with some money that are paying for it. I think that's a great thing. But getting back to the nil stuff.
Yeah.
I remember when I was getting recruited and Bo sat there with my dad and parents, and he's talking about how he's going to help me get a summer job, and that mattered. help me get a summer job. It mattered. It mattered to my dad, that he knew some alum that could help me get a job. Right now, and people aren't talking about this, Danny, but I think this is a huge thing. Because I've been around recruiting for 40 years now. My brother went to Illinois, played for Coach Mueller, and I did it dealt with it as a coach. But Michigan State right now they've got an alumni who's given $500 a month to all their football players and all their men's basketball players. Now, if you think that isn't a factor, you're crazy. That's going to be a factor. If a kid is up in the air on which college to go to, especially if he comes from a stressed home life, which, I coach guys from all types of every kid ain't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And if I go to this school and this guy's going to pay for the electric bill, the phone bill, and get make sure that water's running, there's a lot of kids that come from those environments. I played with them. I coached guys like that. So that is a huge thing. And I can't believe nobody's talking about it because that's going to be a factor. And obviously, you know about the kid at Ohio State, the $1 million deal he signed. So this stuff is going to get, who knows how it's going to end up, but don't fool yourself if you don't think it's a factor.
All right, Scar, we've got a memorabilia minute to get to. I want to go back and hit on the football game, preview Michigan, Maryland a little bit and get your thoughts on it before we call it a day here. It's going to be senior day for the Terps playing at what they call the Shell. I did hear Maryland head coach Mike Loxley on the Terrapin Sports Report. He did have this to say about the Wolverines.
Again, we'll have our hands full with this group because they are a well-balanced team. They're well coached. Again, they've done a great job of not beating themselves and putting themselves in a position where they're competing for a Big Ten title, which I think, will come down to their game behind our game. I think they play Ohio State the week after us. And so not to put that in their head, but I think they got a big game coming up. So,
all right, Coach Loxley, open that. Looking ahead a little bit there. Let's start it out here. The senior day for the Terps here. What kind of game are you expecting in College Park this Saturday afternoon?
I love the psychology of how coaches, he's obviously trying to promote that Michigan players need to start thinking about Ohio State. I laugh at that, and that's funny. But anyway, let me tell you, Danny, when I saw Maryland play the first game of the year against West Virginia, I'm like, man, that's a good football team. That's the best quarterback in the Big Ten. That's what I thought at that time. They beat a good West Virginia team. The quarterback is a heck of an athlete. He can throw the ball. They run him. He's tough to defend. They got athletes. He's recruited some pretty good players. But then as I've watched Maryland play, they've been inconsistent on offense. He'll make a couple huge mistakes. Sometimes he doesn't. They played Michigan State fairly tough. They scored 3 touchdowns, but they threw an interception in the end zone. They got on the 4-yard line one time, 1st and 4, and got stopped. There was a lot of points there. I saw them against Penn State. Penn State converted all these first downs, third downs on them. They beat Illinois at Illinois, which is a pretty good team. And let me say this about the senior night. And I like to dabble every now and then and make a bet here and there. Senior night, senior day matters, Denny. That last home game, that matters. They will be motivated. They will have a great week of practice because regardless of what's happening with their season, they're going to want to put their seniors, send them out as winners on their last home game. So that matters. What I'd like to see is our offense pound them, run the ball, 5-minute drives, score. Their defense is average. Their offense they're going to spread us out with a quarterback that can run. Their offense is what is a little more of a concern for me. But I would love to see our offense control the ball, pound them, and finish with scores. I think 14.5 points is crazy. What else do I got here, Danny? I'm giving you some wisdom, man.
Well, I want some of that. Let me, I crunched some numbers here. Talia Tungavailoa, I was watching some of his throws and some cut-ups, man. The guy, he definitely is an arm talent, and, he'll try throwing it all kinds of different ways, on the run, sidearm, different things. But over the last 3 weeks, he's got the 4th most passing yards among all Power 5 quarterbacks. He's rewriting the record books there for the Terps. 20-10 interception ratio on the season. But if you look just against the Big 10 East teams, 7 TDs to 4 interceptions. He threw the 2 touchdowns against Michigan State, had the 1 pick, 1-1 against Penn State. He had 2 touchdowns, no picks against Indiana, and then 2-2 against the Buckeyes, who were able to put 66 points up on him, which I don't know if Michigan's going to be able to do that. But you know what? When you have 2 defensive ends and you have the secondary playing like it is, this is a tough matchup here for Maryland and the Wolverines' ability to run the ball. I think Michigan's going to win this game. It seems like it sets up really well for them.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're the better football team, but this isn't going to be like going to Indiana. This is going to be a whole nother deal, and the crowd will be a factor. I've been to a game at Maryland. They're going to have good support, and this game really matters for recruiting. We want to win this game and dominate Maryland because we recruit a lot of Virginia, Maryland, DC kids. So, this matters. What I want to see from Michigan, I want to see less predictability from formation. I think we're really predictable in certain formations, like against Penn State, that 4th and 2 play. We talked about it. We are a tight end wing, heavy, dominant with our play call. I'd like to see us be a little more left and right, run away from the wing. And one of the points I was hoping to see Donovan Edwards get some snaps, because we got to have a guy ready, man. Because if something happens to him, and if Corum's still not back in the lineup.
I'm with you on that. Hey, Scar, I wanted to ask you specifically, because Michigan has seen a lot of zone defenses, and both Ohio State and Maryland feature man-to-man. And so Michigan, it's good that they're going to see some of this. What do you think it comes down to when, you've had mostly predominantly zone defenses, and now you're going to have these guys pressing up on you? What do you think it comes down with releases, and then also what Cade McNamara is looking at, where he's placing the ball a little bit different when you're waiting on a guy than when he's shooting down the sideline with somebody in his back pocket? What do you see there?
Denny, I would say I've watched Maryland's defense and I've watched Ohio State's defense. They give you a little bit of both, just like Michigan's defense. They all try to disguise. Okay, everybody's trying to disguise what they're doing. They're trying to confuse the offense. I don't know if I agree that they're any more or less zone man than anybody we've seen in the past. But our quarterback, our offense, our coaches are upstairs trying to get that read pre-snap. And then Gaddis is relaying his call down to the field, and then they're making the call. And they're trying to get it determined whether they're in man or zone from upstairs. That's what he's seeing. That's what they're trying to read. Are we better versus man or zone? I think we have answers for both. I think our offense has answers for both. I mean, the biggest play against Penn State, I'm guessing that maybe Josh Gaddis, and we talked about this, maybe he saw they were in man coverage in that formation, or he went in and he called that play based on how he thought they lined up. That might have been called right at the line of scrimmage. So there's a lot of it's different than when I played, where guys were in a huddle, they called the play. Defenses were in a huddle, they called the defense. Now everybody's waiting to see how they line up and trying to make a call on the field. So I don't know if that answered your question, Denny, but
it did. I did hear McNamara after the game said that they had seen on film that Penn State on some big plays had gone to man. So maybe that was the thing there. I did ask on Wolverine Den if there was anything that people wanted to see this weekend from the basketball or football team. MGO Blue 9798 says he's going to go outside the box. He's skipping ahead to the 27th. That's the Ohio State week. He wants to see U of M utilizing the victory formation in the last minute or so of the game. He also wants to see a healthy Andrell Anthony being used in a downfield passing attack more often.
Yeah, that's the greatest play in football, man, is when you can you can take that knee. That's the greatest play. And yeah, I would, Anthony has done well, man. That's definitely a kid that he can play. He's a keeper, and I love him because I want separation. I want my receivers that can get separation. But he's the kind of kid with his length. even if he doesn't get separation and he's still able to do it, but he's still got length. He can go up and make a play if the ball's not perfectly thrown. So that's why, you love those guys.
I've liked how the different wideouts have stepped up at different times. I mean, Cornelius Johnson has been there. Then it was Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson went down. And then you had at Michigan State, Andrell Anthony just come on and a star was born. He got a little bit banged up. And then Roman Wilson came back. And then last week had the 2 touchdowns. So that was pretty good. And then All had his first touchdown. I like that as well. All right, Jim, I promised a game-worn authentic Michigan football helmet from 1986. That's what I promised for the Memorabilia Minute. So I don't know. Is that what that is?
I told you in one of our other episodes that obviously, there's a story, man. We're playing my last football game. We're playing the Nebraska at the Fiesta Bowl, big game, and you go to the game and you've got your little duffel bag. And I was kind of thinking ahead. Coaches always taught us to think ahead, plan ahead. So in that bag, I had another bag. So I made room so I could take this helmet with me. And so after the game, it was a great Michigan victory. We beat a good Nebraska team. And this helmet was coming home with me. So Big Johnny, the old equipment manager, if you're out there, I got you. I got my helmet.
Hey, Scar, I thought you said you were a linebacker. That looks like a defensive tackle's face mask.
I had a smashed up, my neck was, I had some issues. So we tried different face masks and, to try to help me out there. But this was pretty much with a lot, that was pretty much the look. It was a lighter face mask. It was supposed to help me out a little bit, but
can I see the sticker on the back? They look like they have like some designer stickers now. These are just straightforward, like Wolverines on there, right?
Yeah, a little Wolverine sticker.
Put it up close to the camera. Let's see those Wolverines. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's nice. I was looking to see if you had any paint from Nebraska but you were tackling with the right technique, right? You didn't.
There's a couple scuffs on there. I don't know if you can see them on there. Yeah, this helmet.
Now that you look closer, you can.
Yeah, what we used to do is we had I don't know if people know this, but in college football, you have a practice helmet.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that stays in your locker room, your practice locker room. And then when you a home game or away game, now we got a whole nother deal. We've got a game helmet. And so those game helmets are cleaned up every game. And it's a different helmet. So every player will have 2 helmets.
All right, that's good stuff for the Memorabilia Minute. I like it. An authentic game-used 86 Fiesta Bowl helmet, Jim Scarcelli's. All right, Jim, my parting thoughts, you can say anything you want, but my question to you is tomorrow night, will you DVR the game and just wake up early and watch it, or will you stay up? How's that going to work for you? Have you thought about it?
I'm going to try to hang in there and watch a little bit, and then I'll see how I do at halftime. But I will definitely see the beginning.
That's a good game plan. I like that. See where you're at halftime.
But I'm an old guy, man. We can't hang like we used to, man. So it's tough. But I'm gonna try to hang as long as I can, and if not, I'll just have to get up in the morning. But hopefully, our team. We want to see other guys that can score, Danny. We want to see other guys that can score. That's the big thing.
All right, I'm picking 38-20 in the football game, and Michigan to go 2-0 out there in the Vegas main event. Hit a jackpot, going 2-0, come back, and I don't know if there's a poll come out on Sunday. I was looking at The Athletic today. They dropped Michigan out of their top 11. They had their top 11 teams power rankings, and they dropped Michigan out of their top 11. That's all right. We'll see. They come out with a couple wins. I don't know if they'll drop out of the top 10. I don't know if they should, but we'll see.
Yeah, that stuff's irrelevant. Indiana had a good win last night. The Big Ten looks, like I said, I think Purdue's the toughest team. They look really good. That's going to be the toughest team to beat, I think, in the Big Ten.
There you go. All right, Scar, as always, we appreciate your thoughts. And I guess against Maryland, you're invited to come on in and talk about the game afterwards. We'd love to have you.
I'll be back, Danny, ready to roll after a Michigan victory. I'm saying Michigan 35, Maryland 20.
35-20. So I said 38-20. We're pretty close. All right, Scar, we'll talk with you after the Maryland game. We appreciate your time.
Go Blue.